we're here at the Wiley House in Frenchville, Maine. And we have a display here at the Wiley House. It's actually a museum in town. And the display this year is the Roadside Diner, or more affectionately known as Rosette's Diner, or Rosette's in Frenchville. And here with me we have three people who are closely connected to Rosette's. And could I have your names, please?
My name is Claudette Saucier.
Joanne Bouchard-Lavoie.
Maureen Lavoie.
And connection between both of you?
Yes. 47 years of marriage. 24 years at Rosette's.
At Rosette's. Today what we'd like to do is talk about the history, how Rosette's actually started, the restaurant itself. And Claudette, you were part of the original founding family. First of all, tell us who your mom and dad were.
Mom was Rosanna, or better known as Rosette Saucier, Chamberlain Saucier, and my father was Willard Saucier, and he was from the Soldier Pond area.
Now, were they cooks, or what were they doing before starting Rosette's?
He was farming with his father. And his father got ill. My grandfather, for a while, would sell meat in the back of a pickup, comme Léo Morneau, and pas Léo, Joe Morneau. And Mom would make the boudin and the coton, and they would sell that. But then he got sick with cancer, and went to Massachusetts, where his daughter lived, and came back very, very sick. And with all that expense and everything, they lost the farm. So they moved to Frenchville because my mother was originally from this area more than the Soldier Pond, Wallagrass area. And my father was working for Gérard Chamberlain, my uncle, and then he worked for the farmers. But his ill was always failing him. He was a sickly man, having been born at 1.5 pounds in those days. And so he had, and my grandmother all gave us down the line diabetes. And finally he was treated for that. But Mom wanted to help out. She was helping out on the farm, but there was nothing to do. So she went to work for her sister, who had the Rainbow Diner, the Rainbow Inn in Sinclair. And she fell in love with cooking that summer. And Dad would say, well, she wanted to go back to work with somebody because that was open only in the summer. And Dad said, if you're going to do something like that, do it for yourself. So, and my tante was getting rid of her buildings because she was moving to Connecticut, and there found her second husband, and eventually they married. But she never, she had a little house where she lived right across from the diner in her last days. But in Connecticut, they had apartment buildings, and so she had no more interest for the diner. And she had also owned the Rainbow Diner, which was Valère Deg's place, dance hall. And so they bought a house, a 2-story house where the restaurant is. And the bottom part was a blacksmith boutique. Okay. And so after they bought, they took the sides down and brought the building down with jacks and all that. And so made it into 1-story place, and built in front. And they started in the fall, but they had to stop because my grandmother on my mother's side was living with us, and she got sick. And so they stopped because the carpenters were making noise and everything. She couldn't rest. Then they stopped in sometime in December, and she died a few days before Christmas. So in January they started the finished part of it, and they ended up opening in February, February of that year. And she was there. They were there as long as they could be. And when Dad got more and more sick because of his diabetes that caused him a heart condition, and Mom was okay with cooking. She could cook 24 hours a day, I think, but she was not a bookkeeper. So, you know, the salaries and all that, the income tax and the sales tax, and so Dad got to do that. He'd get up in the morning and he swept in the restaurant, and Mom would sleep late because they opened only at 11 back then in the beginning. And that's how it started, and they expanded 3 or 4 times to make it bigger and bigger. But it was a very small business to begin with you know, homemade pies, homemade oopie pies. Not as much meals as today or as later on, but it was pickled eggs, pickles pig feet, and it would sell. So slowly they expanded the building, they expanded the kitchen and the service, and to begin with, my father wanted to name it Rosette. And she didn't want. She says, it's not more my place than yours. So, and they talked about it quite a bit. And they decided roadside diner because there was a road on 2 sides. And when Danny took the place over, he turned it into Rosette's Diner.
Now, this.
Oh yeah.
What year did they actually start this? You mentioned it was in December
that Mimi died.
She died, and they were working. They were building at the time.
Yeah.
And what year did you?
They started in 53.
In 1953.
Well, it's either December or January.
And the main menu, really, it wasn't a full
no,
menu. It was
right at the beginning was a chart on the wall. That's all it was. And they would also sell groceries and candy and buy redemption bottles and cigarettes and ice cream, and so they eliminated some of that and expanded on other places. And
who were the primary customers at that time? The people that went there, were they local or?
Yes, we didn't see strangers back then.
It was and people from town,
right?
From Frenchville
and Senegat, and people who would go home after Saturday night shopping or seeing the movies or whatever, and they'd stop by for a piece of pie or coffee and the such.
Now, when you first started, they were the two, your father and your mother were the two that started. Now, did they have any kids at the time?
Yes, when we moved there, she had 3 kids, the 3 oldest ones, yeah. So
now, did the kids help out?
Well, we would help out with errands and things like that. But I remember one of the first years that they were there, and they couldn't find any help for potato harvest. And at that time, more people were coming in for lunches. So I was drafted. And I loved it.
Now, you mentioned 3 kids. What were their names, and in what order were they?
I'm the oldest one, and my sister Joyce, and my brother Galen. And Jim was born they had the restaurant.
Oh, they had the restaurant.
Yeah.
So you were there helping your mom and dad with the business
from the beginning. Yeah.
Now, did you get all the dirty work, or did they have you? Who did the cooking and you did the dishes?
Ma did the cooking and did some dishes, and it's more running errands and take care of your brother.
Okay.
Because he was young then.
Did your father do side repair of small appliance, or is that later?
That's later. They were preparing to sell, and he was going to do repair small appliances, and he took a course, and at the time Galen was old enough to take the course with him.
Oh.
And so they worked at that together, and when June came in the picture, my husband, he helped out in that too. So
Interesting.
So the first menu was very limited. And all of a sudden there was an interest of people were stopping by to eat things. What was the popular, once the menu developed, what was the popular food or the menu item that attracted more people?
French fries, hot hamburger, hot chicken, hamburgers, hot dogs. It wasn't I remember when they moved into chicken later on, yeah.
Fried chicken.
That that attracted.
Fried chicken.
Yeah.
Now, what about, you mentioned pies, and you mentioned even before the restaurant started, she was a good pie maker. Was this a draw as well for the restaurant?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
What was the one that drew most people?
The Graham.
The Graham cracker pie.
Yeah.
History.
Yeah. People came from miles and miles. They get Rosette's Graham cracker pie.
Now, how long did they have the business?
They sold in 1970, 73, yeah?
Yeah.
So you had it for 20,
Over 20 years.
20 years.
Yeah.
20 years or so. And then at the end of the 20 years, what happened? You decided to sell the business, or?
Well, they wanted to sell because my father's health was getting very frail, and he was started with a heart condition, and he could barely help because he'd get sick and have to put pills under his tongue, and so that, Ma said, that's enough and we'll survive somehow. So they decided they were going to sell 1 year, and my father said, well, I need time to build a home. And so next year, they were from Connecticut, and the next year they came and they had changed their mind. And so I remember making a novena with my mother to St. Jude to sell the place. And when Dad was home at the time, the first time we went, we were saying that novena in church. And the first time we went there, the guy came with my father. He came to my father to buy the place. So that from there on, it moved. And they moved with me across the street because he didn't want to lose the sale. So they moved with us, and they did sell. My youngest one it's the week she was born that they moved in.
Oh my goodness.
So your mom and dad, when your mom and dad had the restaurant, then they lived in the restaurant as well.
Yes, there was an apartment. The first part of the house was on top of the blacksmith, so they brought it down. That's where we lived, and in front they made the restaurant. And it was a jukebox and a pinball machine and 2 booths and a counter service, round counter.
So people, when they came in to get something and then leave. They didn't stay there very long.
Some of them stayed, but there was just so much space. But there was just so many customers too.
Yep.
Because people didn't go out to eat then like they do now. They did that for once a month or a celebration or something. And there was when we first moved there was no furnace. It was just a wood stove heating the place. And in front there was this little stove, Franklin, I think they call it, a little stove. Anyway, and in the morning before lunch, the guys from Raymond Farm, would come and have sandwiches. Like, and a strange thing, deviled meat sandwich.
I know.
Whatever they wanted, she would accommodate. She was always like that.
Yeah.
But it drew the business at the same
Yes,
time, and
yes.
it kept on growing.
Yes, yes.
So in what year did they actually sell it, and to whom? What happened? Who did they sell to?
They sold to Harold and Reine Martin, which was, he was from Saint Agathe, Louis Gagnon's wife, brother. He was one of the youngest in the family. And they were in Connecticut and decided to move back here. But that didn't work out for too long, because once they were here, they adopted her sister's daughter, who was dying and was pregnant, and so they were very interested in having children. And at that time, well, they devoted their whole selves to her, so they decided to go back to Connecticut, and they sold to
Rowan and
Danny and Lorette Martin.
So really, they didn't have it very long. They had it.
No, a couple years.
3.5 years they had it.
Yeah.
And
Now, go ahead.
no. Now Roland. Now they were from
St.
St. Clair. Oh, yeah.
Lorette wasn't though, huh?
No, she was from Madawaska.
Yeah.
And
They bought in 77
they bought
From Harold.
From Harold.
and Reine Martin. They bought that in 77 from them. And they ran it till 82.
But if you want to open,
Yeah.
So now the restaurant gets sold, and then to Danny and
Lorette.
Martin.
Yeah. And he's involved in government. Wintertime he wouldn't, they'd only open Thursday to Sunday when he'd be back home.
He was in the legislature,
Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah.
He was.
He'd go to Augusta and back and forth, and
but they also had 3 kids
had 3 kids.
living in the apartment where
Where
you're
Rosette had been
saying,
living.
right.
Yeah. And then we came along back in 82, 81, 82. 82.
So you bought it from Danny
And
that
in 1982.
1982 in
Yeah.
August. Started August 1st.
August 1st and till 2006.
Oh, you had a lot.
April.
Lot of
24 years.
24 years you had it.
Yes.
When you bought the restaurant at the time, had it changed from its original beginning, selling, just a few menu items? Had it developed into a restaurant with a full menu?
Yeah, it was known as Rosette's Restaurant, and it was known for fine family dining. From seafoods to steaks to burgers, chicken. We had liquor, full liquor
He got
bar.
his license and he had wine and
Then he had wine and beer and stuff, and then we continued. And
So Danny had really expanded
then it was
the menu.
Yeah.
the menu.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we just kept that going. Don't change anything, and the thing is, don't change anything, and just don't fix something that's not broke.
Not broken.
In other words,
Was the draw again? Claudette mentioned French fries as being the draw.
oh, French fries was.
Still maintained the homemade French fries,
Yeah.
which was the big.
I get it from local farmers.
Well, Danny did that.
Yeah, Danny.
Yeah.
And when we bought, her brother Harold was a potato farmer, and we started with him. And then when he retired from potatoes, we got it.
Patresse, all the locals.
Local, Danny Labrie. And the last year was John Gendreau. That's Montagne. I go get the truck and go get a load of potatoes and bring it and put it downstairs, and when I was empty, I'd load up the empty barrels and go get some more. And
This
Kept the
is,
farmers going.
how many potatoes would you buy? Would you use in a week? Roughly, I mean,
well, I'll say there's one year, the
In the
busy,
peak years,
the
though.
peak year, we go through 25 barrels
a week.
a week.
So you had somebody peeling potatoes all the time.
Oh yeah, yeah. We had our little dishwashers, and that was their.
Everybody would.
Everybody would. Okay, time to do potatoes. So they go downstairs and run the potatoes, and we had plastic barrels and put them in there, and we had a solution that would stay white, and they'd fill them up, and they'd put cold water in there, and the one we needed, we'd go downstairs with the buckets, scoop them out, bring them upstairs. If it was for mash or for French fries, we'd cut them.
Or JoJo's. There's four
Jojo.
different. You'd use them for bakes. You'd use them for French fries. You'd use the potatoes for mash.
Yeah, we'd pick out for our bakes
Yeah.
and stuff. And
So really, the potato.
The
that
potato.
Really, the potato was the staple. I mean,
Yes.
really, the
Yes.
product that
Yes.
you serve the most.
Yes. Yes.
Different.
Yes. That's what.
You know, living in potato country, that was
yeah.
that was the idea.
that was the ideal.
Yeah.
And the price wasn't.
Yes.
I mean, it wasn't like
It was the
like it
years
is
the farmers had-
nowadays. You know,
Yeah.
we had we can say we had a break. You know, and while everything was a lot cheaper then,
Yes.
and we'd load up the potatoes, give them fries.
Give them French fries.
Yeah.
Now, when Rosette herself had the restaurant, it was almost a family operation. You know, Claudette talked about the girls working there, and
Yeah.
it might have been. In your case, had the employees when you got it? How many employees would you have, or did you have?
Oh, well, when we started out, we maintained some employees from that Danny had because his mother-in-law used to work for him.
Waitress.
And she started. And from there, we got some local people that we knew that would help out. Our kids were a little too small to help out at the time, but they did. I mean, things that they were allowed to do.
Yeah, they grew quick.
Yeah, they weren't. But, you know, people like, I remember we had started breakfast. We're the ones that started breakfast a month after we purchased it. Why? We were enthused to just be there, I suppose. And nobody around had breakfast in the valley. So we decided to start breakfast. And so we hired this lady, a retired lady, Madame Irmodzian, that was our morning waitress, and of course, faithful person, was in every morning and was loved by everybody. And so that's how the breakfast, and Dorel used to do all the cooking in the back. So we didn't hire anybody for breakfast cook when we began. So he's the one, and in the first few months, actually, there was no waitress, and he would do both.
Until we got a waitress.
Yeah, and then it started being busy because the farmers started liking that. They would come in and we'd open, at the beginning it was 7 o'clock, but then we had to change it to 6.
6 o'clock.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
It would fill up.
Wait
They'd be
at the
outside
door.
at the door waiting for the.
Waiting for the doors.
waiting
yeah,
for the
and
wind.
it would fill up. The whole front would fill up, and you get to know what they're eating, and I think
Yeah.
they still eat the same thing today.
Yeah,
You know, and I'd look outside, okay, who's there, and I'd start their eggs, and when they sat down, the plate was there. You know?
You already knew what their order was before you walked in the door.
If it was 2 eggs over easy, or scramble, or an omelet, or French toast, or...
and we hired our sister-in-law who started for breakfast too, and she had been there as long as we were there. So she knew all the customers. Her name was Jacinthe Bouchard.
Bob's
And,
wife.
so she came, she was easy we knew that we could rely on her for breakfast, and she would leave some days at 1, some days at 3, and
Yeah, she'd go into the lunch area.
Yeah.
Lunch, time, and then 1 o'clock she'd leave.
and then so on, so many other employees that have done
Then we
all-
hired a weekend cook for breakfast, which was Phil Levac. our town manager at the time. So he'd come in, do Saturday and Sunday morning
To help you out.
to help me out.
It's the long
And-
hours though, because we extended the hours.
Yeah, because Claudette mentioned that when they had it, it opened at 11 o'clock. I don't know what time did it close at night or in the afternoon.
There was nobody.
You stayed until everybody was gone.
Yeah,
After the run of the drive-in and
yeah.
Yeah.
in summertime, we'd sometimes close. It was starting daylight.
Really? So, I mean, it was all night.
Yeah.
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 I remember times closing and coming home with Joanne, and it's outside. It's bright outside.
Yes, light.
It's light.
outside.
You know?
Yeah.
We're going to bed, and 2 hours later, go back. And
Well, Saturday night was we did this for a lot of years. We were open till 2 o'clock,
2 in the morning.
2 in the morning. So you would have all these people, there was a lot of dances back then that people would go to and get out and come and eat. And of course, you know, it was nothing to cook a T-bone steak at 1:30 at night for them.
Half chickens and
Yeah.
hamburger steaks. And they eat that, they go to bed, and the next morning they were awake and they didn't die. Or I think nowadays we need something like that when we get up the next morning.
But you know, it sounds like Rosette's originally was started as a family type restaurant.
Yes, yes.
But you continued the tradition,
Oh,
and
yeah.
all the owners kind of kept that same tradition. It was
Yeah.
really for the local people.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you got to know them personally, and they got to know you personally.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, the big assets for us was the fact that we were fortunate enough to have a worker with us, which was the original owner, Madame Rosette. So the day
She
that
came back with
yes,
She came back after you bought it. She came back.
Well,
Yes.
we'd sit after the lunch rush, and we'd sit at our booth and have lunch, and we'd look over to her house, which was next door to Claudette's there, down, and she'd be sitting at the window in a rocking chair, and she'd be looking and looking. So one day Joanne says, I think I'm gonna go ask her if she wants to come in. And
she did.
She did, and she started
She
to
was
work
working
again.
weekdays. Yes.
She had worked with Danny too.
Yeah.
yeah,
After my father died in '77, she was still, she felt young and
Yeah. Yeah.
and she worked.
She worked a few
And
years, I think, with him. A few years, I think.
Yeah.
yeah.
'Cause,
And my siblings, the 3 siblings and myself worked there, okay? Now, after that, my 4 girls worked for them.
yeah. So it went on.
So it went on between
It went on
the
between
associates.
the associates and us.
Yes.
And of course, for us, Madame Rosette was respected. She was an elderly employee, and we had a few others too, like I mentioned, Madame Zion, and then we had a dishwasher who, Madame Bertrand Dumet, and so on, Carmen, was washing dishes. So with these elderlies working with us, they were respected by all our younger employees, and it became like a family thing. They looked up to them, which I think helped us a lot being in business.
You mentioned how many employees. The busiest season one year, I remember one year, a summer with the part-timers and full-timers, 43 employees
43 employees at
In a
one
week.
time.
in a week's time.
And a total of, I happen to have a list of every employee. I
You did? You kept the list
I
of all
kept
the
the list of all the employees. Well, they were
Yeah.
all teenagers and, people from the valley. There was a few from Madawaska, but Senegat and Frenchville were the most
Yeah.
people that we
A few
always
from Fort
hired.
Kent.
And a few from Fort Kent. But on the whole, I was tallying, and within 24 years, we had 4,000 employees.
400.
400, I'm sorry.
400 employees
Yeah.
in 24 years.
Yeah,
A little
a lot
over
of hires.
400.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Would
we
they-
got to know a lot of the townspeople and their families, and
Did they start young, and when did they stop working? Is it they're graduating from high school and
After they
college and
graduate.
moving away?
Yeah.
college,
They
yeah.
graduate, and then that summer's still on, and then off to college they go, or to service and stuff, and
So that's why
Now they
that's
go-
why they left. I mean,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
yeah.
And they helped us because we had 4 of our own. And so as they were growing up being teenagers,
Yeah.
it was nice to have other teenagers around, and they related to the others. And so it became a family thing.
It's a family business.
Yeah. So,
Now you had it for 24 years. Now what happened after those 24 years? You decided to retire.
Decided to retire.
we decided to retire
At a young age.
Yes, at a young age, due to it was tiring. We were both very tired after being in there because, as a matter of fact, we can vouch that our first vacation was taken only 10 years after we were in business.
First week off.
First week off, and we said to each other, "This is ridiculous." And this wasn't due to not like today, not having somebody there that could run it or help us out. We trusted everybody. I think it was due to the fact that we didn't think we wanted to leave because we had to be there. It was our business. Today, I would do it differently.
And then Madame Rosette kept telling me,
Yes.
Madame Rosette kept telling me,
wise.
when you're in business, you should be in business more than 15 years. And then you have to change, you know. I said, well, you were more than 15 years. Yeah, but that was me. That's nowadays. But we were there 24 years, and it was great.
Yeah.
So then you decide, and then what happens at that point? Did you sell the business to somebody else?
Well, we did. We sold it to Scott and Mary Jadava. And Mary had been our waitress for the past 3 years. We had recruited her. They were originally living in Connecticut. And one day, you know how it was done, her parents used to come in to eat, and we were talking about their kids, and she said, yeah, my daughter's coming back from Connecticut, and oh, well, she needs to waitress. So she came back and started working for us, and she was interested in purchasing the building because her parents were the owners, Gilman Sear, of the Tasty Freeze in Madawaska. So I think that draw her to saying, oh, I'd like to have a business of my own. So anyway, this is what happened. In 2006, we sold to them, and Arel and I retired, and so we've been enjoying retirement since then. And unfortunately, they didn't make it, but they tried.
After 11 years.
Yeah.
They were in business for 11 years.
They had it for 11 years,
Yeah.
and then,
Just
with
because
everything.
of the economy and everything, they had to close, but...
The economy and everything it wasn't like when we operated or when the others operated where you could buy, a 5-pound jug of shortening for $3. And it's up to $20-something, and so it got to be expensive. And the employees, you got good ones, and you got some that, that's the big thing. You hear it all over the place now. Employees.
Yeah, getting good, reliable, and
we were very lucky, and we had older people that stayed with us for 15, 20 years, and.
And of course, our kids knew that by then they were all out of the house and gone, and college years were done and everything. We had grandchildren, and we knew very well that if we wanted to enjoy them, because we missed out on a lot of events, not being able to go, weddings, anniversaries, this and that, and family, because we had to work. So we both said, no, we're going to get to enjoy our grandkids, and so that's how it came about.
So what year did it actually close? In
2006.
In 2006?
No, we sold in 2000.
You sold.
Oh, they sold. Well, actually, it's been 12 years. They sold a year ago past April in
2016.
16.
They
17.
It closed.
Yeah,
it closed
April. April 1st. Yeah.
So this long-time business. Built from scratch, a really family operation, all of a sudden in the town of Frenchville,
I know.
it closes its doors.
Yeah.
So we don't dwell on
Everybody's in shock.
Everybody's in, yes, they are.
You meet everybody. Any place you go, everybody comes up to you and what happened? Well,
A lot of things. It was a combination of things, it sounds like.
No.
stuff
Now-
happens every day all over the country, but for a small community, well, it hits everybody, because it was known by everybody locally and far away. And
It's interesting because for Rosette, who when she originally did not want her name to be tied to the establishment or to the business, it's become a famous word in the St. John Valley, and more than the St. John Valley.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure you've had people from where?
Well, that book that we have displayed over there.
We have 2 guest books that they're all over. I mean,
people from
all over the country.
All over the country.
States, which we weren't aware of until we start looking at that, because of course we never asked everybody that came in where they were from. And I think people back then, you've got to remember that there was big families around here, so there was a lot of people coming to see their families that were from all over the place.
How many times did we see these people come in? We knew they were either from Connecticut or some other state. And you're on vacation, visiting with your parents. Oh, we just pulled in. We had to come eat first, and then we're gonna go to see our parents. I was like, thank you very much. But then they come back, while they're visiting, and bring their parents, and it was a thing to do.
Well, the population back then, back in the 90s, it's like they say, the business peaked because of the amount of people around.
Right.
And then, can you relate to the fact that if one of these elderly people passed away, well, that brought the kids all back here for the funeral or birthdays or anniversary. Well, when you have a family that has 12 kids, like, for instance, the Parodies in back of us, it didn't take long that the place was full.
It fills up.
So things like that, And then we also had to, it's coming back, we also started with senior meals on Mondays for seniors.
Like they do
and
at the community
was part of
center.
that. Yep. And Madame Zion,
We served it for
once a month.
For a year or so.
Once a month.
Once a month you had a senior meal.
We do it. Yeah.
Actually, your mother was in charge of that.
And Madame Rosette would come over, and we'd cook the lunch.
Whatever, and dessert.
Make a big dessert. And
love it. We'd love to. So that was our Mondays off, you know.
And everybody would pitch in to help wash dishes, and they were loving it. They
worked together.
It's giving them something to do.
And it was part of the town's business. I mean, the Rosettes was not. It was not. It was an unusual business that really belonged to everybody. You had people from all over town that worked there, and they felt part of it.
Oh yeah.
And of course, being the way we were, we loved people, so we would have Christmas parties, and we would treat our employees, and especially knowing that all employees could come. And year after year, I have VCRs of tapes of Christmas parties that I don't know what I'll do now, because nobody cares about anything. But that tells you, how we loved having those employees with us, and they enjoyed it too. So
now, we've heard of the history, but we have this great display that's here at the Historical Society, and I'm assuming all of you are part of this, part of the setup of this display.
Yes.
That was all our stuff that we had. That we've kept it over the years, and we approached Claudette, and
she came up with the original.
And then we had all the dates of
menus and celebrations and anniversaries, and we decided to make posters of, as you can see, different things of the early business years, the different uniforms up there that all employees had to wear. That's one thing we required. We thought this was nice to know that it was clean, and they all look professionals. And then we even had little posters of centenarian celebrations. We had a couple of ladies that reached their 100-year-old birthday, and they chose to come to eat at Rosette's. And we have one especially from Fort Kent who came with a limousine And that was a big thing because celebrating your 100th year, driving up as a limousine, and her lobster roll and fries were her meal.
And
Yeah, and then we have our pie makers. We had about 4 or 5 different pie makers
from the
to
beginning.
keep up with the original Graham pie that was so famous.
So this, now we have the display, and Joanne, could you maybe start at the beginning?
Sure.
What do you have on
The
display
highlights,
here?
yeah. Well, we started out with the Roadside Diner, which was the original Rosette's Restaurant, and we have a few notation of years. When they married in 1943. They both married, and it displays, like Claudette said, where they were from and how they all started, and about that Rainbow Diner. And back in 1952, 53, and then in 54, renovations, like she said, and they opened for business in the spring with a jukebox, everything that she meant, a pinball machine, she did mention that, and a short order grill, as they say. So this is all what Claudette has mentioned in the expansions in 1957. And of course, I think we forgot to mention that they also had a wait staff that transported to and from home that would sleep over there, right? Their employees,
Yes.
so they had to have that. And of course, back then, people weren't able to travel to work as easy as now. So if they needed employees, they would stay over at their place. So, I've talked to some people, some girls that have done that, and they used to like it very much. And I guess in 73, when they sold to to Harold and Rena, and then they moved across the street and their new house. And then in 74, they had a new house next door to Claudette's, and that's where they lived until she had to be, she started out being a little bit of dementia, and so they had to place her in assisted living at Wisdom. That's where she went. So you would
2 years, and then
2 years,
St. Joe's.
and St. Joe's after that, and then from St. Joe's, that's where she died. Right, she passed away at St. Joe's. And of course, she was missed by everybody because, but we still have their memories. A lot of it, as I go through this, is part of that. So we go from there, pointing out just basically, if you want to know a price, let's take, for instance, a hot chicken was 85 cents with her. And a small fry, which was the big thing, of course. People would always stop in and order fries and cheeseburgers, was 15 cents and 20 cents. So we're talking, and I personally remember walking down from my house. I was brought up in Frenchville with my girlfriends to go have a little bowl of French fries and a soda for 25 cents. And it was well worth it. Just it was almost a mile, but we did it. So that's the prices of that. And then we go to the second owner. He brought up the prices a little bit, if I can find where he had his side French fries to, he had it for 45 cents. So he jumped up a little bit and things like that, but of course the timing, this was the original start of them. So, and I can see here the chicken was like $3 and a hot chicken was $2 with him. So within that period of 3 years, this is what his prices were. There's a few pictures of the building. He built that A-frame in the front so that they would walk in and be covered, I believe. So that was his. The side apartment was still there. And the hours, from what I can see on there, was from 11 to 9, and he had steaks. So this is all I know about him. All I was told is that the building itself was painted in red. He must have liked the color red, because I remember inside, And we've talked to a few people that have said that it was all in red for some reason. But knowing, I don't know why they sold, but they did sell to Roland and Lorette Martin, and I don't know how that came about but Lorette and Danny are pictured there. And from there's a picture of what he did. He extended the front building a little bit. He made it more of a bigger side entranceway, yeah. And we can see his menu also with basically some of the same things, but in hot chicken back then was $3.75, so we're going up as the years go, but of course that's to be expected. But he also had pies and everything. But then I see white wine and red wines for $1.75 a half bottle, and 75 cents for a glass of wine for him. So we could have, I'm sure that was welcomed by many. And then from there, we have to jump to us, which started out in 1982. Let me just go this way. And pictures of when we started out. And of course, we got a sign of Rosette's from HP in Madawaska. And that's his truck right there, installing it.
The first sign.
The first sign's Rosette's, yes.
On the building.
And of course, when we purchased it, the apartment in the back, there where Danny and Claudette stayed and everything, we chose not to live there, so we put a rent there. Danny and Lilette stayed there for first year. They would rent it from us and work for us part-time. Yeah. And so we didn't have access to the back room. The only place that we had was a little room back there so our kids could play. So we made that the playroom for them because they had to be somewheres. And I can remember my youngest daughter, she was only a year old when we purchased it. And I would we owned a red cargo panel van, and she would take her naps in the playpen in the van because while we were working. These were things that stuck with us, all these memories, because they were all brought up with us, working and staying. And so we rented to Danny and Lorette on that building. And then another year, it was somebody else that we rented.
Yeah, we had another rented.
Because we were living in my homestead back.
We had all the 3 rents in it.
3 rents, yeah. And then we decided, of course, to do renovations. But backtracking, the first renovation, we've got to remember that back then, when we took out the place, a walk-in was no such thing for us. The walk-in was, the refrigerator was outside. Danny had this walk-in refrigerator attached to the building. So this is what it was. And then we would use it as a freezer in the winter.
Because you can... The only thing you could do it in the wintertime. Everything else would freeze anyway, so we'd have in our room to put stuff outside, close the door, and it would stay a freezer.
Yeah. So then we started out with renovations, and I have a book of all the pictures of the new renovations that we started. We started basically, I believe, the first renovation was that side, the blue room, the work area. Yes. Yeah. Yes, I have a list of that. I'll have to go get it. Anyway, so as you can see, this is the beginning. Our prices, let's go back to our prices. French fries were $1.50, and a hot chicken was, a hot chicken for us was basically $4.75, and we're talking back in the early years. So that wasn't too much of a high...
early 80s.
Yeah. I have a picture here of, again, we changed the sign with years to another Rosette signs, which we took across, and they're lifting it up, putting it in front of the building. So that became there, that stayed there, and up to this day, it's still there.
Still there.
And then we did little things, us two, I guess, by talking with Madame Rosette or something, we decided that we were going to try to sell ice cream. So we purchased this camper from a person that was selling it. And we bought an old ice cream machine, and we located in the back of the building. And so we would make ice cream. But we only did this, unfortunately, for about a year because it was too much work. We just couldn't do both at the same time. And it wasn't one of those ice cream machines that was that easy. We had to lug up 2 pails of water to clean it at night. And so we said, the heck with this. But everybody enjoyed the ice cream. I think the profit went more to the employees because we would let them have ice cream. So
the kids and the employees.
And so we start off, and of course each year then we'd get some memorable Rosette's things with to give to customers, or ashtrays and keychains, and of course back then it was well known we had this little mirror thing. Everybody loved that because the ladies would have their
check their lipstick and stuff after they ate.
And so we move on with years, and as you can see on this one, there's the breakfast menu, which 2 eggs and hash browns and coffee was $2.25, and a cup of the coffee came with the breakfast, by the way. So this is one of our first breakfast menus, I believe. And then we celebrated our 10th year. And so as we went along with 10 year, we made a big celebration, and you have a picture of the 10th year with the cake with Madame Rosette and Odette and I. And she enjoyed that too because she was part of that. So we had a lot of people come in and help us celebrate. Invited everybody to come, and we had things for them. So it was a big day, and it was nice to see. And we served drinks, and all the employees were involved with that, and she was. So it was good memories to see now because photos were taken, and then let's see what happened. And then you move on into our 1993, which was almost 13 years or some, we were voted top chamber business persons of the year of Madawaska. So we were proud of that. That I guess was chosen by people of the valley back then for the chambers. We had a 15th year anniversary celebration, and we put some photos at the bottom that to see how from the side to the other side how much cars were there when on a busy day or something, maybe Sunday, Saturday, or whatever, somebody had gone out and taken photos of what it was. And then we celebrated our 20th, and that was nice too. We made a big thing. We've got pictures of that, and then the other poster over here was just basically to show the uniforms over the years and some employees, and that's why it was put there in random because they were required to wear that, and that was provided by us. And we were happy to do so because I think it helped them decide what to wear for work. But the only thing we required is come in clean. They were told to come in. Even the dishwashers and the cooks all had white smocks, and that was a big thing that Odette and I stated, that to have that place clean, because we never knew when the inspector would come in. And I remember one day when Madame Rosette was in the kitchen and the inspector showed up unexpectedly, and we both looked at each other, and she said, "Oh, I got to put my hairnet." So she was looking for her hairnet.
She had it
in her pocket.
She turned around and shook it out, and she put it on her head, and she kept on working. Nobody noticed anything.
But we didn't have much violations because we made it a point to keep it clean and everything. So, and as you can see, there's a picture here with her, and this walk-in freezer that we purchased, I forget the year, and that she was happy with that. Yeah. We had her back then.
And a freezer walk-in and a walk-in.
Yep, and and so of course the bar, we remodeled the bar too because it was just a short next to the cash, and we remodeled that. And that's a picture of Odette in the kitchen because we had a small kitchen back then too. Everybody had to.
We renovated.
Yep. And so, like I said, different groups, plenty of girls and boys. We had a few male waiters through the years, which was funny to see because...
Our son Bobby, and then
yes,
we had some boys from Fort Kent.
Yeah, so...
We had dignitaries.
Oh yes, Governor John he wasn't governor then, was he?
Yeah.
He was. And then Angus King.
He was in our establishment. He came in a few times, and Baldacci, and
One of the Kennedy boys was there too.
You had mentioned that, yes.
When Danny was there.
Yes, and then the pie makers, like we say, the famous Graham pies, and I had a list that I was checking out. We were averaging like 1,500 pies a year, so that was a lot of pies made by all these people. Coconut cream and Graham pies, and we had a few fruit pies, and we made donuts once, but that didn't last too long. And so the recipes, we tried to keep the same recipes for each pie maker. Behind here you see Odell had this board, and you can explain to him what the...
we started picking up. Over the years, we started picking up some business cards. We'd had a board in the entrance, and we had a few business cards with slots in there that people would come and leave their business cards, so we started gathering them, and they got to be out of hand, and so we had Monsieur Bertrand-Dumas. He was a local carpenter and retired and stuff, so he says, well, I can make you a frame. So every time I'd have enough for a board, he'd make me a new board, and I'd fill it up. And then, okay, Mr. Bertrand, you have to make another one. I think I have about 12 of these boards, business cards. I'm figuring over 2,000 business cards over the years.
And these are business cards of people that just came in to eat.
And the reason I bought this one, there's one in there that's from Russia. Farmers from Russia came over to visit the farmers in the area to learn about how they grow potatoes and how they keep it and stuff. And they left their card. So I put it in there. I'd have to look to find out where it is there, but it's very interesting. Russia, they seem to write backwards, their spelling and stuff. But we had, from everywhere. And I'd pick them up and staple them in there, and then put them in the board and put the cover on it, and we'd hang them in the entrance, and people just kept adding on and adding on.
So you once you had the card, you had your
he'd make me a board,
and then you just hang it up for people to look at
on the inside of the entrance at the restaurant. I mean, the whole inside was all covered, and then we got too many that we couldn't put them there no more. That's I want to mention that we mentioned renovations and stuff, and the back rooms and all that, and
These are the dates.
I remember when I'm Rosette, we got to do bigger area for seating and more people and all that, and so there's one time she comes over, she says, Odell, you can do all the renovation and the expanding you want, but there's always going to be a line.
There's always going to be a line outside
at the door waiting to sit down, and she was right. All the expansion that we've done, and we used to sit 97
People.
97 seating, and there was still people waiting for a place to sit down, and she was right.
She was right.
That's what happened to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It was all.
Yeah, that's our.
That's our project. It's like we said to you, all the remodeling. We could tell you different years. We'd do one before we'd start another one, and then now that we're all done with this one, maybe. Well, the little maybe turned into.
So we decided this year that the Wally House, we have a display, different display in this room here every year. And so we came out with the idea of, well, we got a lot of stuff, and we got information from Claudette, and we got to put our display now that the restaurant's closed. It was here this year, and I'm sure it's going to be here next year. We can leave it, we'll leave it for next, it'll be back here next year, so people can stop by and view what it was.
And I think we need to say, we didn't mention our 4 kids, but this was our family too. So we had 4, Dean and Renee and Robbie and Sonia. And we can actually say that with them, we made this business because they were part of us and helped us a lot. And even as they went out on their own, I remember times when they would come up on a holiday and be in there with us, helping us. I have a son-in-law that still to this day said he'd never become a cook because we had to tell him a couple of times the chicken wasn't cooked enough as he was helping us out. So we thank them, for being there with us, and I think that's part of something I want to mention.
Now, right now, I mean, we've gone through the history, we've gone through the menus, and now it's closed. What, for each of you, what does Rosette's mean to you personally? Family? Food? What does it mean? Claudette, what does it mean to you?
It's family and food. It was my family, and the things that we were brought up in the business.
Right.
Yeah.
To see the faces of the people that our customers would come in, and they'd have a smile coming in because they were there, and we'd feed them, and we'd stuff them, we should say, and then send them on their way, and then be back the next week. It'd be back, and or a few days later, and back then you'd see people 2 or 3 times a week. They were out to eat, and it was different times, not like it is nowadays. And just that that was your life, and you're glad that you're able to satisfy so many people from the valley, from all over, all these states, and Canada, and I mean, we had a lot of people from Canada. Fort Kent, the Fort Kent, big on Fort Kent people. We'd say it was a Fort Kent weekend. This weekend is from Fort Kent because everybody was all from Fort Kent.
Across the border.
And then, and Canadians and stuff. And snowstorms, and people we'd send our employees home because we didn't want them to travel in bad weather, so we'd send them home early. I'd stay on to cook, and Joanna was waitress. Then we'd had people drive in. We came to eat, while they're there. Blizzard outside. No, we're coming to eat.
I know.
So it made you feel that you were appreciated, for the work you did then.
And meeting all these people, the 24 years from everywhere, from town, the employees, their family, we got close to everybody, and it was a good feeling to know you were doing something. Even with school, I remember having to make sure that the superintendent had given us that, what they called to make sure that they could work for us, and they had to have good grades, and we maintained the fact that if you're going to work here, you're still going to maintain your grades because that's part of it, even though you have a job. So I think the parents we're happy to know that they were employed with employees that were taking care of them. So that was a good feeling for us. So, and today we meet them and we meet everybody, and we talk about memories, and that, what more could you ask? Because you know that today it's hard to find or to do things like we've all done in our younger days. So we enjoyed it.
Well, I guess on behalf of the town of Frenchville, I should say, the Historical Society, and all of us, I think, in this room who have personally eaten there and enjoyed the company there and met good friends, but we want to thank you. Thank you for what you've done, for creating a business that stood behind one name, and the name was Rosette.
That's right.
And known throughout Maine, certainly throughout the valley and everywhere. And in a way, it's
New England
really
and
nice.
beyond.
It is. And of course, we can't forget Canada.
Yeah.
Known and
Yes.
certainly in the area.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Like we mentioned, they have supported us too, and
Yeah.
just a few weeks ago we were at a funeral, and they saw us and they said, "Oh, we miss your seafood platter." And I'm looking and I'm going, "Seafood platter?" You know, so things like that. That's why you know that you've left your mark. You know, so.
Well, you certainly have, and we thank you, and the best, and we're going to keep on looking at this display.
All right.
Right.
Thank you.